Greetings to all, Dr. Flight here. Hope you're doing well. This is a short little lecture that we'll talk about that focuses on the communication process. So as we engage in building awareness, we want to think about what type of messaging we're delivering, and there's a fairly complicated process that we have reasoned makes sense when we talk about communication and how communication works with an audience. So there's a multi-stage process here where we craft messages, we think about encoding and decoding and feedback and things like that that would happen within a model of communication. So as we move forward in this topic today, we'll specifically look at that communication process and the model that we feel is important to understand and know if we really want to communicate well. So that's what we'll talk about. As a marketer, we want to be able to manage each part of the model, and we find that the most effective communicating happens when we're able to do so. So that's what we'll focus on. That's what we're going to move together with today in talking about the communication process. All right, enjoy. All right, so we're going to talk about the communication process in a little bit more detail now. When we talk about communication, there are certain goals and objectives that we could set forth in a campaign or in the general sense when we want to make an audience aware of something we have to say or communicate a message. So the goals then and the ideas associated with, kind of what we want to do often deal with the decision-making process that our marketplace has. And so specifically when we think about this, we can think about informing, affirming, motivating, and then continuing. So four key things to kind of talk about here. So when we talk about informing, we're talking about building awareness and bringing information to the marketplace so that informed decisions can be made. Think especially in the pre-contemplation stage of the decision-making process. Affirming happens when when our market, when a decision is being made, and we want to support a preconceived notion of some idea that our product will do what it says it's going to do, or our service will work. So positive outcomes and results of our product and service are communicated, and we indicate that to the marketplace and convince them in the, probably the contemplation stage that our offer is a good choice. In the second half of the contemplation stage, we're getting folks to make a decision, so we want to motivate them. So we're moving the audience between contemplation into action. And we're generating behavioral change. So in the last part of contemplation, they're choosing, and then they're going into action. So that's another goal or purpose that we have when we communicate. And then finally, post-purchase or post-use affirmations, maintenance, continuous behavior, those types of things are the fourth element here. So informing, providing information, building awareness, affirming, so convincing and motivating that our market that our product or service is good for them, motivating them to behave, so actually getting them to commit, and then finally continuing. That would be the next and last purpose. As we move forward, we'll see that there are any number of different ways we can communicate. We talk a lot about how communication happens and the different means we have to make a communication work. So just from text and from just a broad list of ways that we can get a message across, you can see that communication happens in a hugely diverse manner, from personal face-to-face type things to other non-personal things, electronic and also print mediums as well. Moving forward, there's a fairly complex set of steps that are involved with communicating and getting information to our marketplace. And again, we're communicating for a purpose or for a reason. We want to engage our marketplace in a specific way to be able to achieve some type of a goal, whether it's building awareness or again informing or creating incentive to buy or post-purchase affirmation or whatever it is. We need to be very deliberate in the different steps that are involved in creating a communication. So this model we have is the traditional model of communication that we use and that we have used in marketing for a long time to help manage a message and help achieve the goals that we have. So there's 6 major things that we think about. One would be having a message. Second would be encoding it. Third would be transmitting it. Fourth would be decoding it. Fifth would be it being received from the marketplace. And then the final element here is something called feedback. So the rectangles kind of indicate what's happening in the model. The diamond shape squares are indicators of who's responsible for doing these different pieces. So the sender then has the message that they want to deliver. We have some type of process where the message is encoded, and so the message is translated into symbols. We have mediums, we have the decoder, the receiver has to understand what the message is, and then the researcher or some analytic piece is added to analyze and handle feedback. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about each of these major elements. We'll start with encoding and go through decoding. And so when we say encoding, what we specifically mean is that a message must be put into symbols that could then be interpreted by a receiver to have some sort of meaning. These symbols could be things like letters, numbers, pictures, sounds, colors, and all those types of elements. The sender and the receiver, though, need to have something that we call experiential overlap, meaning that each party can understand each other, and more importantly, they can each understand the symbols that are being used to depict the message. So encoding then is a translating element where I have a message and I need to put it into some form that people will be able to interpret, and then as they interpret it, they'll understand the message that I'm wanting to deliver. The middle portion where we have transmitting, we also have mediums of transmission, include this idea that we need to actually choose who or how the message will be delivered. So when we talk about mediums or media, we're talking about tools that are used to carry a message ultimately to the receiver, and where they what the receiver is going to be able to get. So then we have the decoding process. So decoding means that the encoded message has to be translated or understood. So the receiver at decoding needs to be able to interpret the coded message. All the while, we have something called noise. When a receiver is distracted, they may not interpret the message correctly. And if they don't, then that distraction is something we call noise. Messages that pass through multiple mediums run the risk of having more noise introduced to them or be more distorted. So if a message can come directly from the source, the sender, that's good. If the message has to be interpreted several times, then we have the telephone game and bad things can happen at that particular point. The final piece here that we'll just mention today is this idea of feedback and research. Senders need to know. It's very important that we as marketers, as if we're the sender, that we need to know if the intended audience received the message and interpreted it correctly. That should be message, not massage. That's funny. And interpreted it correctly. So in other words, so that was funny because I did not encode that message particularly well, And I'm glad I caught it because you might not have received that message properly, and that would not have been good. So I might have gotten bad feedback from it. So receivers, though, provide feedback, and that feedback provides us marketers with evidence that the message was interpreted correctly. And this allows us to be able to correct it for future announcements or future messages, kind of what needs to be done in the encoding process. So in other words, if I encode a message and I send it out, and if the market doesn't really understand it, or they don't get it, or they don't receive it, or they misinterpret it, then I need feedback to let me know that that was the case and that I could change my message. I could change the encoding or change the mediums somehow to better represent that message, so that it would be decoded in a better way, so that it'll make sense. So certainly this is a process, and there's been lots and lots of work, research and academic work and practitioner work focused on the communication process. So this is not really something new. This is a very broad and deep concept in terms of the model that we looked at earlier and the different stages of it. Now, specifically, this process happens within the context of the decision-making model. So in other words, while we communicate, we are keenly aware of this decision-making model that takes four kind of broad steps, I guess, and matches up with goals and objectives that we have during the decision-making process. So we have pre-contemplation, where during pre-contemplation, we want to build awareness. We want to make sure that the market's aware of the benefits they would receive of accepting the new behavior or the product or service we're offering. We want to tap into positive public relations and have others say good things about us. And we also use this period of time to influence new donors and new funding sources. So say for instance, we are looking for revenue, looking for resources, financial resources. We need to build awareness among donors, just like we have to build awareness among the public and the clients that could possibly use the service that we're going to offer. So pre-contemplation happens with donors as well, as they think about whether they're going to send us money or not, or help support our cause financially. The second part of the decision-making process then is contemplation. So at this point, we want to specifically communicate the details of whatever our offer is or of our cause. So the market is trying to decide, they're trying to evaluate different options. So they need to know the pros and the cons of our offer. They don't just need to know that we exist, they need to know why they should buy our product. So we want to contrast negative effects of non-adoption, and we want to highlight positive effects of adoption. We also want to communicate key differences between what we offer and what our competition offers. So we have differentiation elements here that we want to be able to add to the mix as well. We may use some social networking media to promote the product, to help others realize that, or help people realize that others also use this product and service in a networked sense, so we can build up that O in the BCOS model a little bit more, the other referent group. Step 3 is preparation and action. So we want to make sure that the client clearly understands what they need to do next. What is the call to action? How do you participate? Where do I sign? When do I sign up? When do I show up? Make sure they understand the process and how they move forward. Intermediaries and channel members may also input at this point in time and add support to this. So I may offer a service, and I may have a bus company who I'm partnering with. That bus company can start promoting the service within their constituency, and maybe on their product base and such, and that would help push the product during the preparation and action stage. Employees, volunteers, um, others who are interested in the public domain will at this point, from a PR perspective, get more involved. Again, external agencies, public groups are enlisted. So it's not just us saying that you should use our product or service. What we're trying to do now is tap into our partner groups, our partners, our business partners, and our channel members to also help us, for sure. Okay, and then that finally leads us up to something called maintenance. Following up and monitoring the progress towards behavioral change would be the next natural step. Somebody has decided to use our product and service, and now we need to show them great support in being able to maintain that behavior. We offer success stories, we offer testimonials, we offer reasons why people have stayed with us over periods of time. So again, the dynamic nature of the communication process is that there are several steps that take place, but what we want to message and how we want to use those steps changes depending on the goals that we have in our actual communication plan. Key takeaway here is the idea that we have 4 different elements that are important, we want to hit on when we talk about communication. We want to inform, affirm, motivate, and continue. Inform, affirm, motivate, then continue. Then we have this idea of the communication model. So the communication model is a very well written upon and studied construct where we have the receiver, or the sender, the sender who has a message. The message is encoded, the message is transmitted, the message is decoded. So whatever the coding process took place, the receiver decodes the message and receives it. And then based on what the receiver does, we receive feedback in order to better adapt and change our next messaging cycle. So the communication model is a huge model, but it's vastly important. And then we finally talked about the 4 different decision-making stages and how we use different communication processes or concepts throughout the decision-making stages of pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation and action, and then finally maintenance. Okay, so this should be this is actually a fairly dense, I guess, or a fairly heavy concept or topic that we just kind of really didn't spend a lot of time on, but it's one that in marketing we use a lot to better understand how to communicate effectively. So if you have any questions, reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. Be sure just to study your text material and know for sure the communication model, purposes for communication, and how we communicate through the decision-making process. All right, thanks. Have a super day.